Elvis Presley. In the 1950s, having been blessed with good looks, charisma, and unbridled musicality, Elvis Presley went from being a dirt-poor teenager to the biggest pop star the world had ever seen. For him, the 60s were a mixed bag, ending the decade on a high. In the 70s, everything about Elvis had bloated into an excessive self-parody, leading to his untimely death at age 42. The story of Elvis's life is marked early on by three lucky coincidences. The first of which being that in 1946, as his knowledge and curiosity of music was growing, his parents received a state housing grant and moved to Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis immediately immersed himself in the vibrant gospel, country, and blues culture there. He began dressing in bright colors and styling his hair real cool. Coincidence number two came in 1953 when he got a job for an electrical company. The company was across the road from the now famous Sun Records recording studio. He swaggered in there, stating emphatically, "If you ever need a singer, I'm your man. I don't sound like nobody." The next year, he got his chance to prove it when Sun Records called him on a whim. What Elvis put together that night was something no one had ever heard before, a rockabilly blend of country and blues, and there was hype from the get-go. After some successful touring, Elvis met Colonel Tom Parker. He was a shady dude who knew the industry. Parker took the role of Elvis's manager, along with an unknown percentage of all his future earnings, but promised to have Elvis on TV within months. The third and largest coincidence is that this was America in 1954. For those who don't know, the economic boom of the post-war period meant that for the first time, teenagers had expendable income. Rebellious youth culture was becoming a thing, and it needed a face. That face belonged to Elvis Presley. The impact of his TV appearances cannot be overstated. With his swinging hips and bedroom eyes, he brought his young audience to fever pitch. Everyone was an Elvis fan, except for the adults. Preachers across the nation denounced him from their pulpits, accusing him of impairing the morals of minors. Elvis was sexy, and the controversy only served to aid his image and popularity. In 1957, just when Elvis's fame and notoriety had reached an apex like that, he was drafted into the army for an 18-month tour of Germany. In 1960, Elvis was back, gaining a new audience with people who looked favorably on his military term. For the next few years, Elvis and his manager took full advantage of his wider appeal by falling into a routine of easily made hokey movies. In 1965, when the Fab Four met the King, John Lennon asked him a question which encapsulates Elvis's 60s career. He asked, "Why do you do these soft-scented ballads for the cinema these days? What happened to good old rock and roll?" In 1968, Elvis took what was meant to be some TV Christmas appearance and turned it into the 1968 comeback special. This was the shot in the arm he needed. Elvis stepped out dressed head to toe in black leather and smashed his classics, and then did some acoustic songs with his charm on full display. It was seen by 42% of the national viewing audience and transformed his career once again. By 1972, however, the splits in his mental health and in his pants had well and truly started to show. Elvis was addicted to pills and food. His money problems, due to his exorbitant spending, were quelled by a lucrative residency in Vegas, but his behavior was bizarre, with reclusiveness, obsession, and shooting television sets. Like a car crash in slow motion, Elvis descended into self-abuse. In 1977, he died in his home in Tennessee. Elvis Presley is remembered today as a trailblazer and a copycat, as a sex god and an old chunky wreck. He's seen as an icon of the silent generation and a timeless symbol of youth culture. However you see him, he'll always retain his title as the King of Rock and Roll.